And welcome to the White Gray Black Weekly Manga Podcast, the podcast where we talk about all the latest and greatest ongoing manga releases. My name is Bruce, the producer of the White Gray Black YouTube channel. With me again this week is Gautam, the god of manga.
What's up, fellas?
Please keep in mind, for all major discussions, we will be talking spoilers. This week, this means up to Dragon Ball Super Chapter 90, and then we are talking JoJoLands Chapter 1. So, one of those pretty easy to catch up on. The other one has 45 years of history. Before we start, let me plug the YouTube channel. If you are listening to us on a podcast, we are live on the White Gray Black YouTube channel. And if you are watching us on that channel, or if you're watching us on the White Gray Black podcast channel, don't forget that we are also in podcast form on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and a couple others that you can find us generically. Don't forget that if you enjoy this podcast and want to support us, head on over to the Patreon at patreon.com/WGBmanga. We are desperately looking to upgrade and keep doing this, but of course, difficult to do with a day job and without any kind of support. So any amount of monetary support you can give us is appreciated, or even just the eyes on our channel. There will be a bonus episode going up on the Patreon coming up before the end of February, so you've got about 8 days left from today to get that done. Actually, by the time you're listening to this, you've got a little less than a week, since if you're listening to it after the fact, you're hearing this on Thursday or Friday. Now that we are through that, let's start in with the news. The first big one, let's start with this. Matsumoto Reiji, who is most well known for Space Battleship Yamato, Galaxy Express 999, and Captain Harlock, he has passed away at the age of 85. A big name in the space, not for more recent anime and manga, but definitely kind of in the 70s and 80s. He was a big cornerstone of the kind of space opera genre.
Yeah, I watched all of Space Pirate Captain Harlock, and that was super influential. Good series. It has aged, but it was a fun watch. Also, Battleship Yamato had a remake, I believe, maybe 6 years ago, 7 years ago.
I think Harlock did too. I think they remade both of those pretty recently. I feel like they did, yeah. One or both, because I've definitely heard about Space Battleship Yamato, and I'm pretty sure there was I think it was a 3D Captain Harlock movie that came out.
And I believe, and I'm gonna pass this off as a fact, but I believe in Fooly Cooly, the Pirate King Adamisk is loosely based or inspired by Space Pirate Captain Harlock. Don't research that; it's true.
I was gonna look up real quick because I was pretty sure there was a new Captain Harlock.
Oh, I thought you were gonna fact check me.
There was a 2013 movie, so that feels new to me.
85 is a good age to live to.
85 is a good age, yeah. And from what I understand, he just died from, heart failure, assumedly from old age. So, yeah. Nothing really unexpected. I don't think he had been, creating or producing anything recently, but still a big name in the industry.
It's bleak to say, but considering how kind of grindy and soul-crushy this industry is, and how much blood, sweat, and tears people put into their work and all that stuff, you see so many people dying from overwork. That 85 is like a long-lived life. So rest in peace. But I'm sure he lived a good life and lived to a long age regardless. So good stuff on that end.
Yeah, it was not necessarily unexpected. No one, he wasn't planning on anything new, but just loss of a big name in the industry, so we thought we would point it out. The next thing is kind of a conversation over here in the West that doesn't necessarily have to do with what's going on in Japan. The English translator of Cypher Academy, this is the Nisoi Isin series that we've talked about previously, resigns from translating the series after 13 chapters. The 13th chapter will be out this upcoming Sunday, the 26th, 27th.
That's wild.
25th, 26th. Yeah, he's resigning. He says he can't do it. This is not. I'm not going to call the person out by name just because it isn't super important. From what I understand, they have like 20 years in the industry. They're a pretty well-regarded translator. This isn't like some new guy who's like, I can't take it. It's too much work for me. This is someone who's in the weeds, who's been doing this, and they pretty much say, I can't do it. I can't translate this series. And to be honest, I'm surprised they got this far, because this series is insane.
I know you drop it like me, but have you seen the translations for chapter 12? You'll understand exactly why they dropped
I think
series.
I flipped through chapter 12. There were some walls of text, if I remember right. Or maybe it was 11, but...
It was this Japanese word game, not Shiratori, but like a different Japanese word game.
Yeah.
That was just impossible to translate. And there were so many, like, if any of you have read the series, it is about solving ciphers, so a bunch of puzzles. And some of these are literally impossible to explain. And every single chapter has so many translator footnotes, explaining the context behind the puzzle, how the puzzle works, and just so the chapter makes sense to the audience. And
yeah, like imagine... I'm trying to think of a comparison. Like imagine trying to... Like a puzzle that has to do with swapping like the letter C when it sounds like an S with an S, which then makes a new word, or swapping the letter C with the letter K when it sounds like a K, and that makes a new word. Like trying to explain that to someone who doesn't use the 26-letter English alphabet is pretty tough. And it's especially tough to do that in addition to like plot and story. Because usually this is one of those things where changing like a Shiratori game up, for instance. So Shiratori is a Japanese game where someone says a word that ends in a, I don't know what the actual official, it ends in a sound, right? The Japanese have all these little, there's like 50, what did we say? 58, 64 sounds. There's like all these little sounds, right? Like ka, ki, ko, ru, ri, ro, like, etc. Like, and you combine them all, right? And you get kashihiro, and that's, 4 or 5 sounds put together. You say a word in Shiratori, and whatever word sound your word ends with has to be the first sound of the next word. And it's just a word game where you're connecting sounds and stuff. And to translate that into English is like kind of easy, and you can just swap up what they're saying as long as the game doesn't matter, or you can explain Shiratori pretty quickly in an author's note. I've seen that done before. Not a big deal. That's a children's game. And that took me, it took me a minute or two to explain, and you kind of have to know, okay, the Japanese language doesn't work with letters, it works with these kind of sounds. At each sound, there's sort of 5, I think there's 4 or 5 vowel sounds, and then there's leading sounds. You combine those together in kind of a cross pattern. Those are all of your sounds. So every word is comprised of essentially one of these 50 or so sounds. But again, that's a children's game. And what's going on in Cypher Academy is not children's game type translations. This is like, again, I think it was chapter 1 or 2 that used those 50, I think there's like 52 sounds maybe, and it like attached them to like the 50 prefectures of Japan. Again, something that if you're outside Japan, you don't know. And those prefectures have names which are made up of those 50 things. And I'm going to stop right there because it's already too much. And there's just no way to localize this series. And that's an issue for foreign translations, at least.
And not just the localization. The fact is that your CS example instantly confused me when you started saying it. And I speak English. I can't imagine even the general public would know or understand all these puzzles, let alone be invested in the puzzles, because the puzzles are getting a lot of time. Comprehending the puzzles take a lot of time, and you kind of want to give those to the characters and the plot, So I don't know. I like the concept of a Cypher Academy. I just don't think it works.
And I think, and to be honest, I feel like Nisoi Isin is a good person to write it. It feels like this series doesn't have an editor on it in a way that instead of it, I'm trying to think. It needs an editor who can say, okay, Nisoi, that's great. This needs to be over 2 chapters instead of all packed into 1, because no one gets it. I don't get it. You have to slow it down. It's not fun to not understand these games. But also, like, even saying that, right, like, a lot of people who are, weebs, Japanophiles, people who know Japanese, the first, 6 or 7 chapters that I read before I dropped it, even some of them were like, yeah, this isn't like a play along and try to solve the cipher before the end of the chapter type series. It's really just like, Nisoi Isin flexing and saying, look how cool this wordplay is. I made an interesting wordplay thing. Look, it's cool. It's like the difference between a murder mystery and a whodunit, right? Those are in actually 2 different genres. You might think they're not. A murder mystery, you are not necessarily supposed to be able to figure out who did it before you're watching the story unfold. And when it's revealed, you may or may not have had the evidence beforehand to know what it was. In a whodunit, you are kind of supposed to make a guess in your mind. That's part of the fun of it, right? And Cypher Academy is not a whodunit of mysteries. It is a murder mystery, and you have no idea how to get to the end, and it's revealed, and you might go, oh, cool. But I don't even know what to say about this series. I
don't see. I don't think. And you struck on a good point here, right? Because I think my favorite murder mystery, and I watch a ton of old ones, new ones. I still like Knives Out. One of the best.
Is a very good one. Yep.
And the reason for that is because the detective has a lot of luck, sure, but the point I liked a lot is that you as the audience saw how he got to his conclusion.
Yeah.
And even if you couldn't get there yourself, you could parse the logic on how the case was solved.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in Cypher Academy, and Death Note does this really well. Sure, L and Light are super geniuses, and you're not, and I'm not, but I can figure out how they came to the conclusion they did. In Cypher Academy, I can't, like, the puzzle is solved, but I'm still confused. I don't know how the character got to that conclusion. I just know a conclusion was reached. And that is not satisfying at all.
Yeah, and the problem is that they are actually explaining how they got to that conclusion. It just doesn't make any sense because it's too much. It's just too complex. There's no way to understand it. It's either too Japanese, right? It's a cultural thing or a language thing that we'll just never get, or they explain it and it's like, okay, yes, that does work, but how would anyone possibly ever know to make those connections? Or they're making leaps of logic, or yeah.
I feel like Cypher Academy reading or translating Cypher Academy is like me going up to like a computer engineer and being like, I have 30 minutes, teach me how to code as well as you do.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
yeah,
how are you supposed to explain that in a short amount of time?
Yeah,
like, and the comparative is, how are you supposed to explain this complex ass puzzle in a few words in the side note
in 22 pages?
Yeah.
Or exactly, yeah, in the side notes of 22 pages. And I think you hit on the other big issue here, which is that it isn't actually, I don't think it is actually the challenge of translating it. I think it is actually the timing of it, right? From what I understand on release schedules is that, I mean, this is based solely kind of on like One Piece leaks, right? One Piece comes out like maybe Wednesday. That the fan translators get it out sometime Thursday, sometimes late Wednesday. And then we get it Sunday officially. So that being said, let's assume that on Wednesday, this guy gets Cypher Academy to translate it, and he probably has to turn it in on Friday or Saturday for like a review and an upload and all that stuff, right? There's other people who have to do more work after the translator is done with it. So you're telling me you want me to translate a series in 2 days, which is more normal, right? That can be done. That's probably what all the series for Manga Plus or Shonen Jump app or whatever, they're all probably translated in 2 days. But to translate something like Cypher Academy in 2 or 3 days with a review, to not make, to quote unquote, not make any mistakes, right? The review people might say, oh, proofreading, it's also probably really hard. I can't imagine any part of this is easy. And then you have to do it in such a short amount of time. The timing is really, I think, the part that probably is killing the author here. My guess is if you gave the author 9 days, right? If you gave him an extra week and 2 days to do it, it would probably be more manageable, right? They could take their time, they could review it, they could maybe find an English analog for some of the games, or just, figure out the best way to word the little additions on the side notes. Maybe it wouldn't be perfect, but I think that the translator would feel more comfortable with more time to translate the series. I put out a tweet earlier that simply just said, why don't you just take a week or two off from Cypher Academy in the West, and then give the translator more a buffer and more time to translate it. Trust me, this is not something that's going to be snatched up by scanlation groups, by fan translations. They don't want to touch this. And if they do, good luck to them.
I don't think there's a demand for them to delay it a week, because I don't think, even with good translations like we currently have, Cypher Academy is not popular in the West, right?
I don't think it is popular in general, but we will see.
Yeah,
Its first volume, I don't think, is out yet. I think it's coming soon. We'll have to see where the sales of all this list. We'll talk about this a little bit later when we review the Shonen, because Cypher Academy is part of that. But yeah, I agree with you. If I would be more disappointed by this announcement of this translator leaving. I'm more relieved for them. I hope that they get to go on and do more things. Their translation on Cypher Academy was incredible for what it was. I mean, I cannot fault them for the translations they've done, and I cannot fault them for not wanting to do it anymore. It is understandable. They put down, I think, some great work.
They MacGyvered together a working product out of like hieroglyphics. It's like they did a good job.
Yeah, and all that being said, Cypher Academy is not very good. So I also just don't.
Yeah.
I'm also just kind of like, you know what?
Well, let's circle back to that, because we're going to talk about all.
Yeah, we'll circle back to that a little bit later, but yeah. So let's do sales stuff real quick. Nothing too exciting. Some pretty standard stuff here. My Hero, Volume 37, up at the top with closing in on 500,000 sales in about 2 weeks. Yeah, My Hero pulls crazy numbers. The Fable Second Contact, which is actually not something I have heard of, is up there at number 2 with almost 100,000 in a week. This is Kodansha Seinen Drama Action. Yeah, I don't know much about this. I've not heard of the Second Contact.
Hey, we're seeing Shikamori up here. 2 volumes of it.
Yes, because Shikamori
is ending.
It ended, I guess, like this week, maybe a week ago. Yeah, but I'll call out My Girl Arakawa up there at number 3. Yomi no Sugai, about 70,000 in 3 days. Yeah, that series is great. I've talked about it. I've talked it to death. Yeah, it's good, and Japan knows it, and the West is stupid for not realizing it. Mix.
I saw that bottom left one on our manga. It's the one where it's like an office lady that lives with a giant cat.
I have seen this. Yeah, I don't think I've read it, but I think I have seen this also. Yeah, that's up at number 1. That's called Dekiru Neku wa Kyomo Yutsu. That's 3 U's in a row. I don't know if that's a misspelling. I don't think it has to be, because it's Utsu. Or those sounds.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Someone from Japan, let us know, man.
Yeah, I assume you can do 3 U's in a row, because there's what I know of the Japanese sounds. U is a sound, U is a sound alone, and then utsu, or it would be utsu. I don't know. That might be
language construct. Anyways, do whatever you want.
Yeah, and Japanese is a very different language. What else here? MF Ghost. Apparently, there is a popular car racing manga, which I didn't know about. I'm kind of curious to check this out and see how it stacks up to Initial D, kind of the original, most popular one.
Does it stand for motherfucking?
I don't know. I'm super curious. MF Ghost is a cool. I mean, that sounds like a rapper name, right? That sounds like a cool
motherfucking Ghost. Yeah, I love it, dude. I'm gonna steal the. I'm gonna become a rapper. Steal this fucking
MF
manga's
Ghost.
name.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's fire. I love it.
Yeah, but rounding out the top 10 here, Blue Box. 10 days on sale, closing in on 100K. Blue Box is very popular, mostly deserved. I think this is a really good series. Sakamoto Days at number 7. Again, 10 days on sale, closing in on 80K. Also deserved. Sakamoto Days is great. I'm super happy to see that it's holding on strong. And once we get the anime later this year, it's going to be even bigger, because I think Sakamoto Days is a great series, even though I think the weakest part is the start. I think by the end of season 1, we'll have some really good stuff in there.
I really like the start, because I kind of liked how fun and slice of lifey it started.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just me.
I don't
Yeah,
think
overall,
it didn't really make me go, wow, yes, this is cool, until I want to say it was chapter 4 or 5. They do that fight in the supermarket really early on with the drunk girl and Shin. And that, when I got there, I was like, okay, this is actually the most creative action I've ever seen, and I'm totally in. Before then, I thought it was a little,
I
it was
thought the
okay,
pilot
but
was fantastic. I thought the pilot
the
chapter.
pilot chapter is very good. I've used paneling from that first chapter to talk about action flow because, yeah, the action flow at Sakamoto Days and everything. The action at Sakamoto Days is pretty quickly coming up on Murata, in my opinion. Murata's great, and he is more. He is less.
I hate to say I don't think it's there, but it's close.
No, but there's a difference. I mean, I think we talked about this before. Sakamoto Days has really creative fights. And One Punch Man has some of that creativity, but not as much, but is sort of better drawn and paneled and everything. But it's just, I don't know. It's a different kind of fun that is also really high quality. So
I will say Sakamoto Days has the most creative fights, and it's not even close.
yeah,
It's like
for sure.
no manga author has more creative fights with good action paneling as Sakamoto Days.
Yeah, I mean, just in this latest chapter, what was it? He uses the handrail from a train that has the little hanging down loops on it.
Yeah, the thing people hold in trains.
Yeah, the things you hold a train that's like on the handrail. They have the little loops that hang down, and like the way that he uses the loops and the bar as a weapon, it's insane. It's the coolest thing. Every week, I feel like I read Sakamoto Days, and I'm like, that's the coolest idea I've ever seen for like cool action. The only thing I can compare it to is Jackie Chan movies from the like 70s and 80s, right? All the cool, like the ladder fight, is a really famous one. All these neat little props. It's like it's a kung fu prop manga is what Sakamoto Days is, and it's so good at it.
This manga has the tavern brawler feat, where everything is an improvised weapon.
Improvised weapons. That's a D&D reference there. Yep.
I fucking love it for that. Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Shikimori ended this week. I think people know that it's happening, so those sales are going up. Is Volume 18 the last one? That's her in a wedding dress. I'd assume Volume 18 might be the last one.
I have no idea, but I have to assume so.
Yeah, there might be one more volume. We might see it show up again. But I think that's it for sales. What else do we got? Noragami, speaking of series ending, Noragami announced it is ending this year at the end of volume 27. That should be later this year. Noragami, I believe, is a monthly published thing. I've seen the 2 seasons of the anime. It's really good. I'd be curious to read the manga. I bet that it's pretty good. From what I understand, it's decently popular. Any opinion on Noragami?
Yeah, I watched like 3 episodes of the anime. I thought it ended like years and years ago. So I'm surprised to see it ending now. It ran for a long time. I didn't intentionally not finish the anime. I love Yato. I like his character design. I like his concept that
he's very goofy. Yeah,
he's like a broke god, but is secretly competent when he needs to be. I love that trope in general. Actually, like one of the strongest guys is just petty and lazy and kind of a garbage shit show until he needs to be useful, and then he pops off like randomly.
It's kind of it's another little twist on the sort of idiot savant character where they're dumb and useless in most ways, but really good at one thing. But yeah, I like Yato's very cool. Also, if you're looking for really good anime openings, both seasons of Noragami have really good anime openings.
And I think like, character design wise, you know how anime characters, Final Fantasy characters, they have a bunch of zippers and jeans and shit.
Yeah.
And there's just like a certain aesthetic if you want to make your character cool in a certain series. I think all characters that wear scarves are cool. So if you want me to think your character is cool, but you're not very good at writing characters, just make them wear a scarf and be like, oh, they're wearing a scarf. Taupe. they might be a ninja. Who knows? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I respect Yato and his scarf.
Yeah, so Noragami, we'll cover that later in the year when it ends and see probably top sales charts, or, not tops, but probably shows up on the top 10 for its final volume or two, so.
It seems like one of those series like Fire Force where it's popular but not like sales toppingly popular. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it definitely does. It definitely kind of falls in that middling area where it sells enough to not be canceled, and it definitely, I think, is because it's not Shueisha, right? So it's one of the smaller ones. I think it's Kodansha maybe publishes it, but it's like big enough to not be canceled. Certainly pretty big.
Sales, not crazy sales.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Healthy sales, not setting any records or anything. Tower of God is back from hiatus. Second announcement: Tower of God back on hiatus, probably in a week or two.
Yeah, the author. I don't know if I've only read his name or his tag. I don't know if it's Sui or Sui. But either way,
I think
way, I'm not sure. Tower of God's great. I'm glad for the fans of it. I'm behind, but I'm glad he's back from hiatus. The dude has been sick throughout creating Tower of God, so he's gone on multiple breaks. He used to do, I don't know if he still does this, but he used to do like an ending chapter like message where he writes about his life. And that guy's life is just like, I'm in massive pain again today. This chapter is really hard. It's like a lot of that kind of stuff, and I'm like, oof, yikes. So it sounds like a much needed break. Hopefully, him coming back from hiatus means he's feeling better, and not because he needs to work again to live.
Man, it's wild to me that the owners and publishers, when a creator has these kind of health issues, they don't apply more pressure or relieve more pressure by simply saying, like, let's find an artist who can draw something that makes you happy and let them do it, and you just take a break and just do the lower effort writing part or something like that.
I think it's like for the smaller people, like for Tower of God, that's a very feasible thing.
I would think so, yeah,
because it's huge. But I think smaller creators smaller things that are up and coming don't get that shot. And I think things that are huge, they have the Togashi mindset where it's like, this is my baby. I don't, if it burns, let it burn in my hands and not because of somebody else.
And we've talked about this, and I think Togashi is wrong.
I think he's wrong too, but he created a thing that's massively popular. So I have not, so I can't empathize with that mindset fully. But I also think, like, swallow your pride, hand it off to someone else. People love you for your story, not your art.
We'll see. I hope that they are okay. I know a lot of people that like Tower of God. I'm not one of them. There's a lot I didn't like about it. The art was okay. I read all of the first arc and I watched the first season.
Season 1 art was just bad.
Well, and the story was bad too, but we're not. I believe we have had this diatribe before. We have talked about this in the past.
Not on the pod. On the pod.
I thought we had.
We don't. No, I don't think so. But we don't have to have this conversation now. Bruce doesn't like it. I personally love it. I think it's probably one of the best manhwa. Right.
Well, I mean, I haven't read enough manhwa to compare it. Of all the manhwa I've read, which is one season of Tower of God and
Solo Leveling,
and one season of Solo Leveling, I don't even know. Well, it's still going, so I have not read all of Solo Leveling.
I have a question. I thought that was just an epilogue, but maybe is it continue? Okay, well, whatever.
I think it's a full continuation. Yeah, I think it's a full continuation with a new artist. But yeah, anyways, let's see. News: Tower of God, Kanokari Volume 3 anime trailer is out. Let's go. Kanojo Akurimashu is so good.
Which one is that?
This is the one with Reiji Miyajima as the creator, the guy who replaces his wife with the girl with Chizuru. That's this. That's getting a season 3. So
that's so fucking. He's a meme. It just cracks me up thinking about him.
Yeah.
But speaking of which, do we have our Reiji update? Has he done anything?
He has not done anything too wild recently. He's drawn some pictures of the main girl. I do not think that he has replaced his wife anymore in any pictures. I'll go check his Twitter real quick, though. Nope. Season 3 announcement. picture pop-up shop cover for volume 30. By the way, this series has been going on for like, what is that, 6 years almost? A little over 6 years, maybe. All the girls in wedding dresses. Yeah, just classic Reichi shit.
Well, folks, you heard it here first. There are no wife replacements this week, but we will keep you in the loop, though. So if he does replace his wife in a picture or in real life, you'll hear it here first. Actually, probably not, but you'll hear it here at some point.
You'll hear it somewhere. Let's talk real quick about what we chose to talk about this week. I brought it here because it's a chapter 1 and it's a big chapter 1. So, let's talk about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 9, JoJoLands. Did you read this chapter, Gautam?
I'm actually halfway through it. But let's talk on it.
It's wild and crazy and interesting. I will say, for a chapter 1, which is supposed to kind of set up characters and get you invested and create some mystery and mystique, I thought this was great. Now, I am halfway through part 4 in the anime, so I'm not fully caught up. My guess is that I might miss some things in this discussion or not be aware of some things that happen post part 4. If that's true, leave them in the comments and let me know. But yeah, I really liked this generally. It still has a little bit of the Araki stuff where I'm like, okay, why do that? It isn't animal cruelty. This time it's someone getting felt up by a cop.
Yeah,
that's awkward.
That's where I stopped. They lingered on the rape for a really long time.
It's a lot of pages. Yeah, the essay, it's not.
I am also not a fan of using sexual assault as a catalyst to make your character look good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's a trope I don't like.
Yeah, it's a tough thing in art because I think it is fine to represent, bad, reprehensible acts in your art. I also think it is totally fine as a reader to say, I don't want that and I'm not going to read that. So from both sides, it's kind of a standstill thing. I will say that my least favorite part of the chapter was, yes, that they essentially represented the bad guys in the scene, right? The cops in the scene, that they had to show that they were bad guys by using sexual assault. I don't like that. Is that a step up or down from the sort of, I know that there has been like violence towards kids is something Araki has used. He's notorious for just killing animals left and right. Araki is kind of,
I don't know why.
Yeah, I mean, again, different people have different levels, different limits on those kinds of things. So, yeah, I would say from what I've consumed, and again, that's not all of JoJo, Araki has always kind of had I won't say he's had an issue. He's always been one to push the envelope to show that, yes, these bad guys are really bad, and I'm going to show them doing the worst thing that I can think to create right now. Because, yeah,
mustache twirling villains most of his villains are mustache twirling. And that's fine because
JoJo is very direct and over the top.
It is, anyway. And it's at least the parts that I've consumed. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward as far as who's good and who's bad. But again, the way that he represents the people that are bad is not always the most palatable, I guess I will say. But Jodio, and then I can't remember his older brother's name. They kind of swapped around on the gender pronouns there, so I don't know. But it was like Dragona, right? Dragona.
I loved it. I love this guy's design, and I love his stand design.
His stand is cool. Yeah, I'm used to like, it'll be another. It looks like a dude in armor, but like, nope, this is like a weird spider thing, and it like drips and flattens. Like, yeah, I'm super curious to know what their powers are because one of the coolest things about JoJo, I think, for me and for most people, is the stand designs, the stand powers, the stand names. I think are really cool. Obviously, because you're getting kind of musical references, which often resonate with different things. I think the last panel I have here is the musical names. But yeah, I mean, in general, other than the sexual assault, which I didn't really like, I thought that it's super cool. You'll get there, but I'll just talk about it. The JoJo here, like, pushes drugs, like sells drugs. He's 15 years old, and he like sells drugs to high school kids. And he's been doing it since he was like 11. He's been like a drug runner. it's just a super interesting angle to take, right? It's not something you see
Yeah.
every day. It felt very much like, I think it's season 3 of The Wire is the one that's about the like middle school and high school kids that are like part of the drug trade in Baltimore. It reminded me of that a lot just because of some of the stuff that happens. But yeah, he like sells drugs to another guy at school. He just does it. He just shows it like in the whole panel. He's 15 years old and he's like, "Oh yeah, I've been doing this since I was 11. They made me like walk a teddy bear full of money and cocaine across town and stuff."
I like what a shithead he is. I think I like shithead characters, but he's so unabashedly kind of like single-minded and accepting of his shittiness that I'm into it. And I also I think his stand is representative of him as a character in a way, because it's like if you look at what was the third season, guys? Joseph and
13's Jotaro.
Yeah, Jotaro's stand looked like a human, and it was kind of like relatable. Like not
part
relatable,
4 is the
like,
same. It's just like a human with hearts and stuff on it.
Yeah, it's like a normal looking thing. This stand looks like if Miyazaki made a sci-fi Bloodborne, this would be like an enemy creature. It looks like an eldritch robot.
I mean, it looks like a bad guy's stand, right? Like that's kind of what you're getting at, is that this doesn't look like a good guy's stand. This looks like a bad guy's stand.
It's straight up freaky looking, and I love it.
Yeah. Very cool. But yeah, and then the end, they kind of get set up to do a heist. As they have like a group of 3 already. It's JoJo and his sister or brother, I'm not sure, and then one of their friends who all have powers, and then a 4th person who comes in who is someone that JoJo had issues with earlier. But yeah, here are their stands. So JoJo's the creepy stand we're talking about is called November Rain, which I think is I looked these up and I've forgotten now. Is that
Is it a song? Or a band? I don't know.
Guns N' Roses song. Yes, November Rain. Smooth Operators is based on Smooth Operator, which I think was a like funk song maybe from the 90s, and then The Hustle, which is the
Smooth Operator. Yeah.
And then The Hustle, which is the 1960s or 70s, the dance, which everybody knows. Anyways, but his stand is also cool because he can just use his muscles to grab stuff and steal stuff. I also think Smooth Operators is pretty cool. If it's like you'll notice silly. That they like scratch on their driver's license and it like changes stuff on the driver's license. They like scratch on the license plate and it changes the numbers around, and they start like scratching on the guy's ear, and it like all of the stand is like pulling on his ear. It's the most fun part of JoJo, right? Is the stands and their powers and how they work and how they react. Everything else is kind of usually simple, straightforward. I mean, it was fun. I thought it was a good first chapter. I'm gonna try to keep up with this one because this is the first part of JoJo that has started since JoJo has been in the like sort of the main manga zeitgeist, I would say. Like JoJo is more popular now than it's ever been. And this is the last time, I think the last part started in like 2013 or something. It's been a long time since it started. So
for audio listeners, the Smooth Operators are, imagine 4 robot ducks, except instead of eyes, they have headlights, and instead of wings, they have human arms, and instead of legs, they have tank treads.
It's kind of like, you ever play Hungry Hungry Hippos?
Yeah.
It's like, imagine you plop a Hungry Hungry Hippo on the top of a tank, and then they have like arms that are kind of creepy and humanoid.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah, that's great.
I mean, yeah, the
cool
design
design
and visual, I think everyone acknowledges, even me, who I'm not like a huge JoJo fan, I think it's fine. It's not really written in a way that I enjoy because it is Discovery written, right? He doesn't plan stuff out and kind of make this big connecting story. It's very kind of, what's going to happen next? I don't know. The author doesn't know until he writes it, which, again, that just doesn't jive with me as well as other types of stories. But I will not ever fault the visual design of JoJo, which is easily one of, if not the most unique and influential visually designed manga of the last 40 years. I mean, it's almost 40 years old now. Actually, it's over 40 years old. Part 1 was published in like 88, so not quite 40 years.
He's been
old.
writing forever. Yeah.
Really long time, yeah. So cool. Yeah, so I mean, anything else to say about JoJoLands?
No, I'll finish it out. Finish out the first chapter, but
it's good,
so
yeah.
far.
After you get past sexual assault, it's great. So
yeah.
Just hope. So you want to talk about Dragon Ball Super, which I put on the other direction.
Yeah, so Dragon Ball Super, unexpected one for me this week, because I don't think Super is that good. It's okay. It's the same tropes, same plot points rehashed from Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, it is certainly not in the same discussion tier as Dragon Ball Z. Like the Reddit threads and upvotes and comments on it are, mid to small compared to a lot of the other big stuff that shows up. So
yeah, it's like a relatively healthy discussion, but it's like medium sized. It's not as big as any of the shonen stuff. But the issue with Super so far has been it's kind of been doing the same stuff where it's like they fight a bigger villain every single time. Goku and Vegeta get new power-ups. Same thing we've always seen. Goku.
Is it still Goku and Vegeta?
They're the only ones who can do anything.
Is it the same Goku and Vegeta from Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z? Okay. I don't know the context of Super.
They're like 50 something in Super.
Okay.
But they look the same because they're Saiyans.
Right, sure. I believe that. So
they're probably more than 50 because they spent so much time in the hyperbolic time chamber. But whatever.
Right, Goku is easily approaching like 7,000 at this point, right?
He's probably like 90, honestly. Like he's probably that.
Didn't he spend 100 years in one of the hyperbolic time chamber things, like training?
If he did, I don't remember it.
Maybe it was like a year, 10 years or something, but I don't know.
He spent a long fucking time in there though, training with Gohan. Either way, this the last 2 or 3 chapters of Super, even if you haven't read any Super, I think they're great chapters because they mix the fun parts of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z into like 2 or 3 chapters. It follows Goten and Trunks, who have become the new Saiyan Mans, the Saiyan Man 1 and 2. And they're just fighting street crime and going to high school and shit.
Yeah, I was going to say, this looks less wearing sort of like ninja Japanese fighting gear, and he's literally just wearing like a Japanese high school uniform. I assume this is Go-10, you said, right?
Yeah, this is Go-10, and this is one of my favorite panels in the chapter because it's like it's very reminiscent of Goku riding the flying Nimbus as a kid.
Yeah,
but now it's Go-10 with playing like his Switch and listening to music, hitting up the flying Nimbus. It feels like the perfect modern Dragon Ball chapter
version. Yeah, because I've read only the first maybe 20 chapters of Dragon Ball, and this does feel very reminiscent of Goku flying around kind of as a small child, but as kind of a teenage modern version of it because. Back then, he was flying around, some wild jungle without much technology around him, and now it's like, oh yeah, and now there's a market and technology, and yeah. So
yeah, it's really cool, and it's also reminiscent because he's like you see flying Nimbus a lot in Dragon Ball because Goku couldn't fly, and when everyone could fly, they stopped using the flying Nimbus, but this encapsulates exactly why you would use the flying Nimbus even if it's slower.
Play the Switch, not watch where you're going.
Yeah, it's like you don't have to. It's like you can fly, but maybe you don't want to. You could just play your games and listen to music, and someone else takes you there.
Yeah.
And yep, in this mini arc, there are new androids created by a new professor. The new professor is very goofy, and his motivations are very goofy. And as such, so are the androids, who's just Elvis.
I was going to say, this is android number 7, I assume, and it's literally, he's an Elvis impersonator, or he is Elvis.
Yeah, and they're not strong androids. They're just like, compared to the Saiyans, they're just there. And it's just hijinks, right? That's a new professor. He's like, this whole chapter, like, it's all very goofy, very fun. There's like fun action, not serious action. And it feels like a complete return to form. Like this author knows how to do Dragon Ball. Clearly a fan of Dragon Ball.
Yeah. Do you think is it a return to a form that is, how do I word this? Does it go too far back? Does this feel outdated because it feels like 80s 90s Dragon Ball, or does it still feel good?
The only outdated part of 80s 90s Dragon Ball, in my opinion, were the jokes because they don't age well in modern times. But I think the tone and the lighthearted attitude behind it still ages very well, right?
It's a fun read, and I think this captures it perfectly. You're not sweating, you're not tense, but you're having a good time with it.
Yeah,
and
fun, yeah.
yeah. So if any one of you liked Dragon Ball Z at any point, I would give. I think it's the last 3 chapters. I'd give those a read. Even if you have no context on Super, it's a standalone like mini arc. And on the bottom left of that big dinosaur panel, that's Krillin. He has
Wait, in the hat?
in the hat. He's a police officer in Dragon Ball Super.
That's funny.
Yeah, he pulls out his gun pretty readily.
What? That's hilarious. God,
Yeah.
he also has powers. Can't he throw a disc? Is that like his one thing? Is he can do the disc?
Yeah, he's the strongest human on the planet. He's literally stronger than
And he's
Frieza
like
was in
the
Namek,
weakest person in Dragon Ball Z by a mile.
He's the heart of the series, but yes,
Yeah.
he is the weakest. But also he's like stronger than Frieza was on Namek, and Frieza could blow up Namek.
Wait, yeah.
But it's all inconsistent bullshit because it's Dragon Ball. In the first few episodes of Super, Krillin was also a police officer, and he got hurt by bullets, which makes no fucking sense at all.
It's like you've been hit by energy blasts. Yeah, Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z are maybe not single-handedly responsible for an entire subset of anime and manga fans, the power scalers, right?
The worst kinds of people, yeah.
I mean, yeah, that is not a pool of discussion that I like to dip my toes into ever. But yeah,
Honestly,
I don't think we have power scalers without the "it's over 9,000" meme, without the Super Saiyan 4, Super Saiyan 5, Super Saiyan 6, Ultra Saiyan, whatever, Fusion Saiyan. Like if Dragon Ball wasn't structured the way it was, I don't think power scaling as a sort of sub community of manga and anime, I don't think it comes around. So thanks, Dragon Ball.
If you have ever argued on Twitter whether Zoro or Sanji are stronger, you need to touch grass really desperately. I'll be real. Power scalers suck.
Yeah, I mean, having a discussion about who's strongest, that's fine. If those are the only conversations you're having, yeah, take a hard, long look inside it yourself, I think.
The discourse is just like painful to read because it's all circular arguments.
So much.
They get really angry. Yeah,
man, and the hard part is like I'm in the Twitter manga and anime stuff, right? Like I'm liking stuff, I'm having conversations about it, and the Twitter algorithm isn't quite smart enough to realize that, oh, this person said that they loved, the writing in Urasawa's Monster, or wow, Akane Banashi was really good this week. Yes, it was. And I liked that tweet, and it goes, hey, here's this guy's dogshit top 10 power list from One Piece. You want to see this? And I'm like, no, I don't. And I look at it, and the problem is, even me, who I'm like, oh no, I don't want to deal with power scaling, whatever. I see it, and I look through I read the top couple of things on the top 10, and I'm like, what is this guy smoking? This is so wrong. I could tell him why he's so wrong. I don't. I do not participate, but in my mind, I'm thinking this person is an idiot, and I would fight with them online. So in that way, I do kind of understand the power scalers, because yeah, somebody goes to rank the One Piece people and says, I think the strongest person in One Piece is I don't know, Marco, and you're like, what?
How?
What?
Yeah,
that's wrong.
I saw that list, and they were like, Garp is third, but Blackbeard wasn't even on the list. And I'm like, okay, yeah, this is like, I don't need to acknowledge this. I'm just gonna move on with my life.
What was the one that I saw? It was like, I remember what it was. It was like ranking of the best swordsmen in One Piece, and I was like, oh, okay, nice. So it'll be like, we're playing into it. I don't care. We're gonna play into it a little bit. We're gonna power scale for like 3 minutes. We're gonna power scale for like 3 minutes. I'm like, okay.
I'll go
best swordsman in One Piece. I'm gonna take my dog for a walk when we're done with this. Like, okay, obviously, what you're expecting to see is you're expecting probably Mihawk, and then Zoro, or maybe Mihawk, Shanks Zoro, and it was like, oh, Mihawk's number 1, and then number 2 was like, Law. Was it number 2? And I was like, wait, Law? Really? I don't know. Anyways, but it's too much of that. Too much of that. Get off of the power scaling.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dragon Ball Super, pretty good. Check it out. Anything else to say on Super?
Nope. That's all I got.
Cool. So let's get into our main discussion here. So the last block of shonen releases, which came out about 3 or 4 months ago, they're staggered kind of one a week. That grouping is... So there were 4 series, I believe, in that grouping. That was Ginka and Luna, the Ichinose Family's Deadly Sins, Tokyo Demon Bride Story, and then Cypher Academy. No, hold on. One of those is wrong. Ginka and Luna started earlier, maybe, because I think the last one of those is Ichigoki's Under Control.
The last one was Ichigoki, yeah.
Yeah, Ichigoki is the last one. I think Ginka and Luna is a little bit older, because I know that... maybe Demon Bride. Demon Bride was earlier? I don't know. Demon Bride and Ginka and Luna were a little earlier.
Ginka came out in November, I believe, but it dropped at the same, like, they staggered everything
similar,
like 1 week apart.
Yeah, because I think Ginka and Luna's on, like, chapter 20, the Ichinose Family's on, like, chapter 13, Cypher Academy's on chapter 12 now. Yeah, so, and then we tossed in Fabricant 100, which is a Jump Plus series, which came out about the same time. I think we're about to hit chapter 10 or 11 of that. So this is kind of the newest wave of shonen. So what is your initial take on these as a whole? How do you feel
as a whole? I think it's kind of expected, right? We get a lot of middling series, and we get a few gems. And by a few gems, I mean Ichinose Family's Deadly Sins.
Yeah,
that's the only gem. That's the only one I'd say is good. And I also have a big soft spot for Ginka and Luna.
Yeah, I would say something that is encouraging for me, just looking at this block of series altogether, is that none of these read like a typical shonen, except maybe Fabricant, but even Fabricant, I think, is different enough an idea than a typical shonen. So, for instance, the block before this that had Dororon, and what was the other one?
Alien Area.
Yeah, Aliens Era, Ayashimon. All of those grouped together all felt so typically shonen to me. Dororon especially, and Ayashimon were very just kind of stereotypical shonen. They were all, we talked about this last week, they were all just kind of Bleach copies. And looking at this setting, the only one that is even remotely a little Bleach-like, right, or a little typical shonen-y, right, is Tokyo Demon Bride Story. But even that's, like, it's more kind of romance slice of life, a lot more romance slice of life than it is an action series. So, yeah, I mean, in general, just to say, the diversity inside the shonen genre that we have of this grouping, even though I think most of them are not very good, is good to see. I have spoken previously on how I feel that WSJ generally doesn't like spreading too much diversity in story types around, but it looks like that might be changing. So that might, I might actually have been wrong on my take there, because I think this is pretty good. I mean, code cracking high school, magical otherworld snowman guy, some potential maybe time travel family mix-up story, and then a slice of life with demons, and a robot guy getting controlled slice of life comedy. Like, those are not all typical shonens, and I appreciate that I'm seeing that.
I hope we see more unique stuff, because I think this is a symptom of all of the shonen shit they pushed the release before getting axed pretty fast.
Yeah.
But a lot of stuff here got axed pretty fast, but I think the hope is that Ichinose is successful. So from that, maybe they branch out into different genres instead of always sticking to the battle genre,
Yeah, and I wonder because, like I said, the grouping before this was pretty typical, so it's possible they might do a cycle type thing, right? They might be like, let's try to find the next, let's try to find the next Jujutsu Kaisen in our, spring, summer releases, and then after that, we'll try to find, something different that'll stick. Ruri Dragon might also need to be included here. That's also one I think feeds into the sort of slice of life diversity, very popular. That kind of hasn't been running, so there's not much to say about it. But Ruri Dragon came out in a similar time here.
And I think a lot of these battle shonens, right? Like, those are much easier to write than something like Ichinose Family, and usually run way longer. So I think
if
that's
they catch
why,
on, yeah.
Right, if they catch on, exactly. It's way easier to write a battle shonen like Bleach or Dororon. And I think that's a good selling point to Jump, to keep putting that stuff out there and hoping one of them sticks, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, and we talked about it last week a lot more if you want to hear us chat about it, but I do think that Jump is pretty continually looking for the next Bleach, the next Demon Slayer, the next Jujutsu Kaisen, because those are their big money makers, right? Like, I don't know if it really matters how popular Ichinose is, even if it sells, moves a lot of manga units. You aren't selling T-shirts, you aren't selling figures, you aren't selling $200 or $300, die-cast statues of the Ichinose family's deadly sins, but Jujutsu Kaisen, you are selling those types of things. So, Jump, I think, is very interested in finding the next big sort of action battle shonen thing, because the cross sell, there you go. That's the word I'm looking for. The merchandise angle of the money they make from that, and the licensing of using it for advertisements inside Japan and outside. That is appealing, and I don't think they will ever stop looking for that. This is what I talked about last week, but I don't think they'll ever stop looking for the next Bleach clone, the next Naruto, the next One Piece, although there isn't really ever going to be a next One Piece. There will just always be One Piece. None of you are... We're right that none of these are that. These are all not the next Bleach. These are something different, so...
Yeah, and that's a good point. Like the Pokemon Company, for example, the biggest IP in the world, games make up a smaller fraction. It's like a small fraction of their overall profits. It's all merch.
It's all merch. And my guess is stuff like I know the stuff like Evangelion. I heard on, I don't remember, was it the Yard podcast? One of the podcasts is visiting Japan. They're talking about how you don't see Evangelion branded ramen in the States. You don't see Evangelion, bank advertisements, but in Japan it's everywhere. So, my guess is Evangelion is popular. But, there is a manga for that was published, I think, after the anime, and I'm sure the anime Blu-rays and movie Blu-rays sell well. My guess is Evangelion is mainly popular because of merchandising and advertisement. So, all that to say that's what WSJ is looking for from a business standpoint. Is they are looking for advertising and merchandising, but I don't think any of these series are going to be that. Maybe Fabricant of all of these.
I don't think so.
But I don't think so because it's not very good. So
Ginka and Luna is the only one with the potential to have like merchandising ops, in my opinion.
Yeah,
because Ginka is literally a plush. And yeah, I the only point I disagree with you on is that Ichinose's performance isn't important. I think it exists in the same space as a show like Breaking Bad, for example, where you're not going to merchandise it because like nobody or at least not as much as something like a Marvel show that's on Disney Plus, right? No one's going to buy a Walter White figure in the same way they're going to buy an Iron Man figure.
True.
But it exists in this space where it gets views, and Jump sells copies, and it's also like an award-winning space, like where
I do. Yeah, I was going to hit that if you did.
Critical acclaim. Yeah.
Yeah, this is an awards bait series, even though that's not really a negative context because Taizen 5's last series, Takopi's Original Sin, won a lot of awards and was really good. And this one is very similar vibes and is also really good. So let's go through just one by one here and talk about how we're feeling. Let's start with the one that we've already discussed a little bit. Let's start with Cypher. Anything else to say on Cypher? It's not very good. That's really the thing about it, is that to me, if the puzzles were really cool to solve and it had kind of an okay skeleton of story and character underneath it, I would say like, okay, cool. Maybe maybe there's an angle to it. I think the problem is I didn't really like any of the characters because I dropped this maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. The puzzles are incomprehensible, like we said. So there's like, there's no positive parts of this series, like maybe the characters are okay.
No.
But they're not good enough. I mean, they just aren't compared to some of the other stuff, especially even in this grouping, right? Like I would even say, I read the most recent chapter of Tokyo Bride Story, Tokyo Demon Bride Story. And I haven't read that since chapter maybe 3, and I still was like, oh yeah, these characters were fun. I remember, and it had some good stuff, and I think it's clearly leading to an ending. But even that, I would say like, yes, these are fun characters, cute characters, whatever. And I love Nisoi Isin. There will be I'll put a clip together sometime of me just gushing over how much I was ready for Cypher Academy and how much I love Nisoi Isin and Bakemonogatari. And then this comes out and it's like, it's not very good. It's pretty bad. But yeah, anything else to say about Cypher Academy?
So we covered a lot of it when we were talking about the editing process. The puzzles are incomprehensible and they take up so much time in a chapter that could be used on character stuff. And the issue is that I have, and we mentioned this before, and to preface, like Bruce, I've also dropped it like 5 weeks ago. It is the main character didn't really have agency, so even like we couldn't come to understand the conclusion of each puzzle, like we mentioned. But also on top of that, the onus behind the main character's powers is that the glasses help the main character solve these puzzles because they're super smartphone glasses. And the glasses solving the problem for the main character takes away a lot of agency, if that's the right word.
It is. And it's a very solid point. Even something like My Hero, right? Deku gets an overpowered power at the start, but he has to learn how to use it. The glasses in Cypher Academy, there's no learning involved. There's no harnessing the power. You're right. It completely takes away the character's agency and just says, if I have the glasses and they are powered up and I look at the puzzle, it solves it for me or it helps me solve it.
And my second and that's big, right? Like on top of, if you stack it on top of the problems we already have, that's a big issue. But another issue, like an even bigger issue in my opinion that I had from the first like 5 chapters or 6 chapters I read is that and even rookie writers know how to do this, which is why it's bizarre and I don't understand how this happened, is I don't know what the main character's motivations are because I don't think the main character knows. Like the first chapter is like, I don't know why I'm at this school. Everyone's so smart. I just want to go to school. It's like that. It's like, why are you solving these puzzles? What's your motivation? Like they have none. At least up to where I read, they had no motivation to be where they are and to be solving these puzzles.
And that's a big. I agree. That's a big sin. You should leave the end of chapter 1, I would say, especially of manga, at the latest the end of the first volume, which is about what I read up to, and be able to say, okay, I know what the main character wants or is going after, or what their goal is, what their motivation is, and I do not know. There is a little. They just didn't do a good job of it. There's a little bit of an angle of like, well, maybe they want to stop war, but that's not really an important enough angle to really get into. The thing is, it's just a slew of problems with this series.
The main character didn't even mention like, I want to stop war. Like that was a different antagonist in the series. It's
like offering up, would you like to stop all the war? And the main character goes, yes, I'm a good person. I would like to stop all war. I will take that motivation, sure, for a chapter or 2.
Insane.
Yeah, just a slew of problems with this. I don't know. It's weird because I think if I had to put forward an anime I've seen with some of, if not the best character writing, I would put the Monogatari series up there. It's undoubtedly top 5, probably top 3, and very likely top 1 for me as far as good character writing, character establishment. So I don't know what's going on with this. Part of me wonders if this series is Nisui Isin writing the puzzles and having a bit of fun, and maybe the artist is the other author on it and they're writing the rest of it, or
I don't think. I think it's his fault.
it could again, it could just be an editing thing of just they're letting Nisui Isin get away with whatever, or he's, you know,
I think
he might just not
it.
care about anything except for writing the puzzles, which kind of does sound like a little bit more like him, but yeah,
I place it's the problem is like you're a rookie editor, for example, right? You're a rookie editor, or you've been in editing for 2 years, and you have to work with a legend of industry. It's hard to give feedback or say, hey, I don't like, if I was in an editor's shoes, right, and I'm working with this titan of industry, and I said, I don't understand these puzzles, this isn't good reading. I could also think in my own mind, it's like, maybe I'm just too stupid to get this, and
true.
other people understand his writing better. He's done so well after all, you know? So I don't know. And Japan has a huge respect culture, so you can't flat out say, hey, this is bad. This is shit. Especially to someone who's way more famous than you and who's put out like huge series like that Monogatari series. So I don't know. Maybe that's the issue. Same thing happened with Kishimoto on, what is it, Samurai 8? So
yeah.
So either way, that's my thought on Cypher. Anything else on Cypher?
I end it quickly. Let Nisui Isin move on to something else.
Yeah.
That's about all I've got to say on that one. Let's get the trash out of the way first.
Okay.
Ichigoki's under control. Pretty bad.
I have nothing to say aside from the first chapter. It was incredibly unfunny.
I had heard people say like, "Oh, this chapter was pretty good," and I went and I tried, and I cannot. I will say, if it would not surprise me if this one ends up surviving for a little bit, because gag manga kind of run on a little bit of a different steam there. But yeah, this one's just not very good. I don't want to read it, and I have not been. So
yeah, I don't know. It's like if you eat microwave meals your whole life and then you go to like an okay restaurant, it might taste like the best thing in the world. I feel like people have adjusted their expectations to think it's shit after the first chapter. So anything remotely entertaining,
right? Yeah,
it's like good in comparison. You know.
That's a good point there for sure.
But I might just be a hater. I haven't read anything past the first chapter, so
I think I read 2 or 3, and it's just not for me. Comedy is harder to do than drama, in my opinion, and this one, I mean, even that being said, I don't think it's very good.
Yeah.
What about Tokyo Demon Bride story? This is one again that I read maybe 3 or 4 chapters of, and was kind of like, this one has a different problem. Instead of like Cypher and Ichigoki of it just having a lot of problems, it's just kind of boring. And I think I read the most recent chapter of it because I was like, I'm going to check it out. We're going to talk about it on the podcast. It's just kind of boring. So I don't, it feels like it is getting canceled. The chapter I read felt like it was leading towards an ending in, a month or 2. Yeah. Anything to say about Tokyo Demon Bride story?
I promise I have more to say on the others, but I actually have nothing to say on this one. I've only read chapter 1, and I thought it was also boring. I thought it was generic, chapter 1. And I feel like I've seen every part of this manga before somewhere else.
Yeah, it's kind of hobbled together, the sort of group living housing idea, which has been done to death and is still getting done. Plus the kind of demon girl crossover thing. Nothing new under the sun, but this is pretty unoriginal. Main character's pretty generically good, nice guy. I do think it's not bad enough. Man, what do I say? The author's next work, I will pay attention to, because I think it is entirely possible that a series like this leads into something better. And again, like I said, I think a series just being boring is a problem with the ideas of the author, and it's the ideas and the execution. And I think they're both just mediocre here. And I think if they have a better idea, they might have a chance at better execution. The art in this is fine. I don't really have any problem with it. It's all just kind of so middling that it doesn't stand out. And I don't think it's standing out for anyone. And it isn't Like it isn't cute enough, it doesn't really have action, doesn't have much going on, so
And cohabitating with like monsters, it's just it felt like the first chapter felt like uh a generic brand ripoff
Just
of
it felt
Jitsuwa Watashiwa, which was popular back in the day,
Mhm.
2013 and maybe early 2000s. It's basically just a dude living with monster girl. And
yeah,
it was
and I mean, yeah.
except it was actually very funny. You would recognize it, Bruce, if you saw.
I think I understood that.
Yeah, yeah. It was pretty big back in the day, and it was actually genuinely funny. But either way, first chapter didn't catch me, so I kind of dropped it.
Yeah, it's just not very good. So let's talk about the ones that we're more actively reading. We'll start at what I consider the bottom and go up. Fabricant 100. I dropped this 2 or 3 weeks ago. Again, to me, this one is a little bit improved of the others, as I think it's an interesting idea, right? It's an interesting idea to kind of have constructed artificial humans, and there's 100 of them, and the 101 is the strongest, and that one's following this boy around. It has cool ideas. This one, again, just kind of strikes me as mediocre, has a lot of kind of storytelling issues. I don't love that the main character is a kid. I feel like if the main character was aged up just a couple of years, it would be more interesting. It's very kind of shonen tropey. Even when it tries to break tropes, it kind of doesn't. It's like a little bit more violent and kind of intense, but this one just does not, comes maybe close, but doesn't quite cross the threshold to be good enough for me to keep reading. So it isn't necessarily bad. It is definitely not as bad, I think, as the other 3 we've talked about. But it's also just not quite good enough for me to keep reading, I would say.
I'm up to date on Fabricant. I think if someone described the premise of Fabricant to me, I would think I would like it. You know, like I think the concept behind Fabricant is better than Fabricant itself.
Yes, I would agree with that.
And I thought I liked the first chapter a lot. I said so when we had our pod episode when all the shit came out. But I like the first chapter of Fabricant. I think the last 2 have been boring. And they're doing a lot of episodic stuff, but that's really not. It's going slowly. The episodic stuff is not working too well. I feel like it's kind of treading water when it should be getting. To be fair, it is doing like the storytelling concept I like, the Blade Runner shit of what does it mean to be human? Do androids dream of electric sheep kind of thing. But
right, and I'll hit on that a little bit later when I talk about Pluto, because that's a series that does it better than anything I've ever read, probably. But yeah, I mean, they're always interesting questions, right? I'll mention this again when we talk about Pluto, but every story about robots is actually just a question of what does it mean to be human? And that's, always an interesting angle to explore. Lots of people come to lots of different conclusions. I love it, yeah. It's a very interesting conversation to have, and we've been having it for almost 100 years at this point, really.
Nier Automata does it better than anything.
Nier Automata is a very good version. I read Pluto and come back to me with that take, I would say. Okay. Yeah, but I mean, this one is, like I said, it's just kind of, it's okay. I think it is probably the top of these lower 4. It just still isn't quite good enough for me to want to waste 10 minutes a week on it, which seems like a low bar, but it's also like, it's just not worth my time.
There's so much good shit out there that even if it's just okay, it's probably not worth your time, right? So I get it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go with the 2 good ones. We'll work our way up of we'll finish with the one that's not going to get canceled. So let's talk about Ginka and Luna.
Yeah, that is seeing an axe 100%. Sold terribly.
Yeah.
I like
really
it.
Did so good.
I like Ginka and Luna. I also think it has the best volume cover of any of them here.
It is, yeah. I mean, the art in it is one of the parts that it just does really well. So.
I think Ginka and Luna is a highly flawed series that is charming, and I like it, but it's going away, and I hope that author does something good.
I do, yeah, again, like we talked about with Demon Bride story, this is one where the next thing that this author does, I will be paying a lot of attention to, because this, for a first attempt, was, in my opinion, I have a hard time saying excellent, because like we've kind of discussed in the past and like we'll talk about here, Ginkan Luna has a lot of issues, and there are a lot of kind of really minor issues. They are the kinds of things that I think are easily fixed with a reset, a restart, a different idea, a different editor. Lots of these really minor issues with minor changes, like pacing being too fast or too slow at times. Because, yeah, I mean, I like the art in Ginka and Luna. I think the ideas, I love the characters. Yeah, Ginka and Luna themselves are the two best characters in the series, and it's always a good thing when your two leads are the two most interesting people you want to see on screen. The side characters I also think are pretty good. The magic ideas and combat is pretty cool, pretty dark at times. Pretty interesting world. I like that doesn't just take place in Japan or a modern day version of Japan. Of all of these on screen, 4 of the 6 take place in some version of Japan. So anything that doesn't take place in just a modern version of Japan, I'm always in support of. Cool high fantasy setting that isn't Final Fantasy or video gamey like it often is in manga. But yeah, it just kind of, this one is readable week to week for me because it is exciting and different and stand out enough, but I completely understand why people did not keep reading this. I completely understand why you would drop this. It just has some really, it has some really rough edges and a really solid skeleton in it, I think. I said, I think the next thing this author does will hopefully be a hit if they kind of clean up those rough edges, even just a little bit, even if it's not perfect. If they come back with another cool idea and they're good, interesting art and their creative world building and their appealing characters, this is great. So,
and there's a reason why they got into Jump in the first place. And out of all of these, I think it shows, right? I think this one shows it the most because I feel like Ichinose and Cypher had their names already big before they got into Jump, but the rest are picked on merit or their pilot, and I think this one I feel like represented of all the new ones, classic Jump the most in terms of the vibe and feel they were going for, and did a good job at it in my eyes. So I think fix your flaws, fix your minor issues like pacing, whatever. Mostly pacing. Fix your pacing.
It's mostly a pacing issue. Yeah. Of this series is only 21 chapters in or something, and I could swear to God we've been through, how many story arcs have we been through in 20 chapters? Like 7?
Like 5.
Yeah, like a lot. A lot of stuff has happened in that many chapters. Yeah. I wonder, do you think any of these, instead of canceling, could get a swap to Jump Plus? Now, Fabricant 100's already on Jump Plus, so we'll exclude that. But of the sort of 4 of the 5 that are up here to get canceled, any of those you think will survive on Jump Plus?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think any of them are worth pushing. Like even though I like and I'm biased towards Ginka and Luna, if I was a Jump executive that had to make this decision, I'd say no way. None of them are last.
Yeah. Unless someone up at the top, one of the moneymakers, was in love with the series enough to give it another shot. I don't think anything. I think we did this a little bit in our prediction stream from late last year, so 2 months ago. It looks, I think Cypher's on the way out. Ichigoki, I think, makes it maybe 3 or 4 more months. Tokyo Demon Bride story looks like it's on its way out. Ginka and Luna looks like it's on its way out. Fabricant's on Jump Plus, so those are a little bit different. And we don't have Volume 1 sales yet for that series, I don't believe. I also don't think we have Volume 1 sales for Ichigoki. When we get those, we'll see. My prediction is they aren't going to be very good. But yeah, I think, if we were to check back in on these in, let's see, it is February. If we were to check back in on these in June or July, my guess is none of them are running. With the exception of the Ichinose family's deadly sins. So let's talk about that one, because that is
That was actually
clearly.
I don't know if you remember, but that was actually my prediction
Mhm.
from the prediction episode. Except I said I revised it last minute, and I said actually everything except Ichinose and Ginka and Luna because I believe in it. And
Yeah.
shame on me. Shame on.
Well, no,
you know
you're.
what? I do it again.
If I remember right, your prediction was everything from last year gets canceled. I had to remind you that Akane Banashi started last year, and so you had to update it to
Well,
say.
you know what I meant.
Yeah.
You know what I meant.
But
no way Akane ever gets canceled, bro.
not at this point. No, Akane's a golden child for sure. So let's talk about the Ichinose family's deadly sins. This series started for me really good and felt like it was going to be really dramatic and emotional, and it has taken a sci-fi Nolan-esque Memento type twist that I did not see coming and has made it even better, I think.
I'd agree.
Yeah.
It's incredibly compelling. And even though I think both of us saw some kind of twist coming because of how many like setups they did in the first chapter, like
lots of foreshadowing.
Separate rooms, like so many weird little small things that I won't list out. But this is a very interesting way to go about it because I still at this point, even after the twist and the reveal, I still can't parse fully with confidence what is happening. And Bruce and I were talking about it. I think this feels like either a time loop, or it's like a Truman Show-esque situation.
Yeah.
So yeah, either way, very compelling stuff. So what would you say your favorite part about Ichinose is?
I mean, it's one of those things that's almost so good, it's hard to pin down why it's so good. I am generally a character-focused reader, right? The thing that I really like is really good character development, and I'm less concerned about plot. That being said, both Takapi was, I think, even a little bit more character-focused than the Ichinose family is. But the Ichinose family, for me, builds a really good, solid base of the main character over the first 4 or 5 chapters, and then introduces you and gets you in with a second family person and says, hey, here's good character development. And then the last 3 or 4 chapters have been plot twists and plot development. And then this most recent chapter, again, went back to characters and focused on the mom. It's just really good at both plot and characters. I don't even love the art all that much. It's sometimes really messy, and I had a lot of confusion with the main guy and his friend. They like looked the same to me because it was only like 2 or 3 chapters in. But yeah, I mean, in the same way that Takapi did, right? Takapi used kind of interesting plot, plot things. They aren't necessarily twists, but plot zigs and zags to take its characters in interesting directions and explore the characters more. I think what I really like about it so far is that you get character development, and then you get something changes in the plot, something changes with the environment or with the family, and it always goes back to focusing on how that affects the characters. So I really think, again, because it's a whole family, and we've gotten development on 3, kind of 4 of them now. Yeah, I'm curious. I guess all that to cap it off at the end is to say I am both equally curious to see how the rest of the characters develop and where they end up, and equally curious to see what happens with the plot, what happens with these twists we've seen, what is actually going on. Is this sci-fi? Is it, you're right, is it Truman Show? Is it Memento? Is it another space thing like Takapi's was? It's just really balanced in those 2 elements of plot and character, and yeah, it's just super compelling the whole way through. What about you? What do you like about it the most?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And when people say it's like a character-based thing, like the characters are most important, kind of like how in The Last of Us or The Walking Dead, human characters took the priority over the zombies. It's like a human show with zombies in it, is what everyone says. Here, like if you think about Takapi's kind of just a walking plot device to explore these characters fully, right, and their character growth. It feels like the exact same, and that's great. It worked really well. Takapi killed it.
this feels like a very similar situation where the mystery that exists, their family dynamics, all works towards how they are now, how flawed they used to be in the past that they can't remember, and how they'll grow in the future. And that's the very most important part. So it's like even more character focused than other character focused shows, right? Like, so I think it's really good. This author writes his characters really well, and it's just very strong so far. Of course, this could collapse if the mystery or plot reveal is really lame, but I don't see that happening really.
Yeah. See, I mean, I think I don't know. It's a good point that you pointed out. This is kind of the way that sci-fi and fantasy appeals to me, why those things appeal to me. It isn't necessarily that magic is cool or spaceships are cool. That is part of it that I do like. The kind of more important part of it is those fantasy and sci-fi elements apply stressors to the characters that put them in positions that allow them to develop in interesting ways. And I think that's what both Takapi and the Ichinose family have really embraced from those sort of sci-fi fantasy elements that they possess. Now, we don't know if the Ichinose family has them, but it's looking to me like there's going to be some kind of at least mildly sci-fi element to this. But yeah, I mean, again, a lot of the fantasy I like is character focused, character climaxes lining up with action climaxes, and Takapi did that very well. This is doing the same thing. Yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's character led, character focused with an interesting and good plot that is challenging them in ways that feel relatable and I can empathize with, even though I've never experienced, amnesia with a family, with my mother who's forgotten that her father cheated on her and moved out, and I don't have any of those personal experiences, but I've experienced, revealing to someone a sad moment, which is kind of what the mother went through, and things like that. And Taizan 5, the author, does such a good job of choosing kind of relatable emotional beats with bullying and, protecting your sister and these kinds of things. Like, we can all relate to those in some way, even now that they're maybe based in a little bit of sci-fi or a little bit of, fantasy. It all comes back to those characters. It all comes back to these sort of relatable, empathetic moments. And those moments are executed really well. And it's just well written. It's well written shit. It's just really good. So.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the bullying, because I think this manga writes bullying very well. Mainly because it has such an empathetic outlook onto human situations that cause, like, why a bully is bullying you,
right.
type of a thing. And the circumstances in there, like, it discusses the cycle of the abuse and how complex it is, through its writing in a very compelling and empathetic way. And I think not many other shonen manga or manga in general do that, because usually the bully is kind of just the cannon fodder for the main character to overcome.
They're
right?
just there isn't I mean, the bullying especially, I think we talked about it back when late last year when it was chapter 2 or 3 chapters in, but I mean, exceptionally well written. So to recap, you're looking at 6 series on your screen. Only one of them is worth your time to read, and it's the Ichinose family's Deadly Sins. If you want to try 2 things, try Ginka and Luna would be my suggestion. Everything else will be canceled within 6 months, probably not even that long.
I don't even think you should read Ginka and Luna. I liked it, but I think there's like shit. Go read Delicious in Dungeon instead, right?
Right, yeah. Go read Delicious in Dungeon, or what's another good fantasy thing? I mean, go read Mashal is probably a better Hogwarts. I was about to say, if you're missing out on Harry Potter because of whatever reason, maybe try Ginka and Luna. But no, if you're a big Harry Potter fan and you're missing out on that, read Mashal, because it'll be funny, hilarious, and kind of appeal to the school people magic. But I mean, that's the Shonen Recap. Any last thoughts, Gautam, on any of these 6 series?
Nope. I think we covered all of it pretty well.
Cool. Well, let's wrap up the show with one more thing. Do you want to go first? Because I'm going to take a while on mine.
Yeah. Let me go first because I got nothing. I have my family in town. I'm Indian. So my family, most of my family lives in India. They flew in some. I'm spending a lot of time with them. And it is effort, but I love seeing them. They're only here for a bit. So yeah, I lose all my weekends and leisure time activities for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. That's
Yeah. What do you got, Bruce?
Oh man, boy, all right, buckle up, boys. It's last week you will hear we talk about the announcement of Pluto, the anime. They released a 4-minute trailer by Netflix, and I said, okay, I'm going to sit down and read this. It's about 64 chapters, I think, and I read it this week, and this is legitimately not just one of the best manga I've ever read. This is one of the best things I have ever read. This is Pluto by Naoki Urasawa and Tezuka didn't really write it. They were dead at the time, but they are the creator of Astro Boy / Tetsuwan Atom. This is a retelling of a single arc from Astro Boy. It's boy, man, where do I even start? We talked previously about the idea of every story about robots is a story about what makes us human, and that is absolutely what Pluto is about. It especially deals with the idea that hatred hatred and severe emotions, severe negative emotions, are a part of what makes us human, and it deals with that. I can't begin to rave about how good this series is.
How long is it?
It is 64 chapters. It took me, I don't know, maybe a total of 6 or 7 hours to read, maybe 8 hours.
You know what? Why don't I read it in my spare time and let's go into it before the Netflix thing drops.
For sure, we should do that. We'll do that maybe on a bonus episode, or before the Netflix drops, we'll talk about it. Because this is the initial plot grab of it is the character you're looking at here's name is Geist. He is a German detective. He is also a robot. He is one of the 7 named, I think they're called the most perfect robots in the world, or the best robots in the world. There's kind of 7 perfect robots. There's Germany has Geist. There's one in Scotland, one in Turkey, one in Australia, one in Greece, I think. And then there's one more, and then there's Tetsuwan Atom, Astro Boy in Japan. And this deals with a antagonistic force who is beginning to pick those robots off one by one. And it deals, man, it's set against a backdrop of a war that all 7 of these robots participated in 3 or 4 years prior in Persia. This is set in the year like 3600 or something, right? Like the far, far, far future. A war in Persia that I think 4 or 5 of them were essentially like, they were sent to war against the Persian robots. So robots in the series have the Asimov, a robot cannot hurt a human, but they can fight against other robots. So, but it also deals with, well, the robots again are basically human because that's the way it works, in, like you mentioned, Nier and all the other stuff, right? The
Blade Runner, yeah.
Blade Runner, yeah. This is very kind of close to Blade Runner type stuff. But yeah, it deals with the fallout of some of those robots being forced to kill thousands, hundreds of thousands of their kind in this war. Tetsuwan Atom is like a kind of poster boy for the recovery of it afterwards. That's kind of his angle in it. One of the robots is anti-violence and did not participate, and that's part of it. And essentially, it has so many interesting things going on in it that it's hard to even know where to start. The guy's storyline is very kind of neo-noir. It's a mystery of who's doing this. He's doing these killings. He's investigating the death of the robots and the death of the robots' creators at the same time. And
I was going to say he looks like a detective, right?
He is very much, yeah. I mean, he's like the super detective.
Is he the first Geist? Because it says 001 for audio
that
listeners.
is No, 001 is the volume. This is, I think, the cover of volume 1 in English. But
Got it.
yeah, but I mean, they're, like I said, the robots have the sort of Asimov rule 1 or rule 3 or whatever it is. A robot can't harm a human no matter what. But there's one instance of a robot that killed a bunch of humans, like 8 or 9. And Geist has conversations with that robot, and all of those parts are very Silence of the Lambs. That robot is pierced through the chest with a giant spear, and so it can't move fully. It's kind of falling apart, but it's kept alive for research purposes, right? Geist goes and has lots of conversations with him. It's very Silence of the Lambs. It's very, he's like, oh, give me your memory chip. Let me see your memories. Trade me your memory chip so I can see what you felt. That's a very cool angle in it. There's this kind of anti-war angle to it, / all the stuff with robots and humanity, all the stuff of dealing with what makes you human, what makes the robots, quote unquote, more human. It's just literally one of the best versions of those that I've ever seen. This is better than Blade Runner, in my opinion. I mean, Blade Runner is a great movie.
Blade Runner is mid as fuck. It's boring and long.
Where was this on
and
your hot
everything
take
that came
episode?
after it? Yeah, I should have used that because everything else that did that same topic. I know Blade Runner inspired it.
Blade Runner is pretty far along in the robot.
Dream of Electric Sheep, whatever, Android Dream. But yeah, either way, Blade Runner's boring and long, and everything else does it better. I haven't seen the sequel though.
The sequel is good. You might like the sequel more. I think they're both very good movies. This is better than both of those movies. This is better. I mean, you said Nier Automata is one of the best versions of kind of a what makes us using robots to look at what makes us human. This is better than that, in my opinion, by a lot. And I think Nier is a very good version of telling that story, although I think it is a little kind of wordy, a little up its own butt at times. I think the creators just kind of like that.
I thought it was pretty I thought it was the opposite of that personally, but I can't. We won't get into the Nier topic yet. But
but again, I mean, this is if you've heard of Monster. Monster's regarded as one of, if not the best written animes of all time. This is the same author. I read maybe a fifth or a fourth of Monster. Monster's a lot longer. It's 180 chapters or something. So I was going slower through that. This was easy breezy read. This is very, very, I just can't stress how well written, well presented, how visually interesting, how cool and impactful. I cried at one point reading this. There are chapters here that will make you cry. They are so emotionally devastating and impactful. This is one of the greatest things I have ever read. I'm not the most well-read person in the world. I have read a good chunk of books. I've read a lot of comic books. I've read a lot of manga. This is one of the best things I've ever read. And I say that unabashedly. It's amazing. And I hope the anime does it justice because it's just legitimately one of the best things I've ever read. Pluto by Urasawa. It's incredible.
Final question for you on Pluto. Why would they make a robot with that hairline? If you can choose how a robot looks, why would you make one have a receding hairline?
I don't know.
Moreover, why did they make Astro Boy a diaper baby? Why did they
so
do that?
You will be happy to know that Astro Boy is not a diaper baby in the actual manga. Let me find. There's a picture comparing what the original stuff looked like and based on the new stuff. So if you can see this.
Oh, he isn't a diaper baby. He looks like a kid.
He looks like he's a normal kid, right? So and this is, I think, true in the original Astro Boy also. The original doctor who created him's son died, and he was trying to essentially recreate his son in robot form. And so that's why Astro Boy is like a boy.
Oh, yeah, I see.
Yeah, but this is all their characters from their 1960 Astro Boy version and then their kind of modern version. And you'll see that a lot of the robots used to look very goofy and kind of cartoony, and they're mostly updated into more realistic versions. Even the three on the right, they actually have humanoid versions of the two big gladiator guys. So you don't see them in this form very often. They're all just basically humans, although the six-armed dude and the helmet guy in the middle, those are both kind of just robots that look like that.
Got
But
it.
yeah, Astro Boy is not a diaper baby in this. He looks like a normal boy, but he also reads much more mature than he's essentially not just looks like a boy. He's not actually a boy, but
Right. This seems like a darker, more dramatic thing, whereas Astro Boy looks like a Saturday morning cartoon, and that's also
right.
like it's just different things.
I thought at one point that maybe I should go and read the original arc. Here's like 200 pages or so. I may go back and read that arc just to see how much work Urasawa did to update this. I'm gonna guess before I even read it that it's a lot of work, right? Because he made 100 and I think it's like 180 pages into 64 chapters, so 1,200 pages, something like that. So, but yeah, I can't. I mean, again, I cannot preach from a high enough mountain with a loud enough voice how good Pluto is. It just really is I think the best version of the robot story addressing humanity. It takes a very specific angle to it. Maybe that just resonated with me in a certain way, but yeah,
it sounds completely up my alley.
Good. I think it's good. And my prediction for when the anime hits later this year from Netflix is if they adapt the whole story in one go, which I think they can do in 24, 25 episodes, this is going to be easy on people's anime of the year list, and it's going to be like the thing to beat, right? And its ending is amazing, is really good, which is something that I think a lot of manga misstep on, right? I mean, I would put Attack on Titan as one of the best manga I've ever read, but its ending has a couple of issues. This is better than Attack on Titan. Like this, it isn't necessarily that's like, oh, this is so much better and Attack on Titan is so much worse, but it's just like Pluto is just that good. It's so good. And it isn't just the writing, it is visually very interesting. I'm going to hopefully plan to make a video about the way that Urasawa sets the scene and introduces and goes in and out of scenes in a visually interesting way, and how it makes the story make sense, especially because this is a kind of cross-country trek, right? These characters are continually going from Dusseldorf to Norway to Turkey to Japan to Australia in a single change of scenes, and Urasawa does some things in the paneling that make it very easy and very good to track. There's elements of dealing with racism and not exceptionalism. A lot of people just hate robots, right? There's a whole arc where there's a group, I think they're called the KR or the KA or something, is essentially the KKK against robots, right? And it's like, you would think like, oh, that sounds kind of, kitschy, whatever. But like, it works an incredible way. There's elements of like American history. There's essentially a miniature American history X plot dropped into the middle of Pluto also. In addition to the Silence of the Lambs and the Blade Runner parts. I mean, it just I don't know. It's so hard for me to just
cycle of violence shit. Okay, cool.
Cycle of violence stuff, and it does, and without spoiling the ending, it does all that and comes to conclusions that are satisfying and still positive in a way that is refreshing, that it isn't with how kind of down and sad and violent and about war and post-war events it can be. It still manages to come to a sort of bright outlook at the end. Not fully bright, but I don't know. It's just, again, I just can't say it. It's just one of the best things I've ever read. It's really exceptional.
Got it.
I would highly suggest it to anybody who's looking to read something that's really adult and really mature, and not mature in the kind of 1990s Spawn mature. It's mature in the way that Silence of the Lambs and American History X and those kinds of things are, right? Where you're dealing with drastic human emotions and killing intents and hatred, and it really focuses on all those things, and it deals with yeah, there's just so many little things going on that it's hard to say it's dealing with this and it's dealing with this, because it just deals with human existence and what it means to be human, and that kind of encompasses all things, and it comes at it from so many different angles and comes to conclusions that are, that seemed so right because they were told so well, I guess.
And we've heard your complaints. There are no diaper babies in this one.
There are no diaper babies, no. There are robot babies and robot children and regular children. But it
sounds good.
Just read it. Good. Yeah. I would love to come back and talk about it in more of a spoiler stream or a spoiler cast for this, because it's one of the greatest things I've ever read. It's really, truly exceptional. This has driven me. I'm going to go back and pick Monster back up. Because I know Monster has an anime, which I think is why it's more talked about. And most of the other stuff by Urasawa doesn't. So I do think, like I said, once this anime adaptation comes out, if Netflix adapts the whole story in 25 or 30 episodes, or maybe, you could do it in maybe 6 or 7 hour long episodes, this is going to be on the lips of everybody for Anime of the Year. And it's going to be another one of those. It's going to be like Arcane and Cyberpunk Edge Runners, where this is going to hit more than just the anime community. I think it's that good. I think you could hand this to someone who's just got done reading, I don't know, War and Peace or whatever, and say, okay, now try this. Or, some sci-fi. If they just got done reading everything by Isaac Asimov and you handed them Pluto, I think they would come out of it a happy reader. And they would say, what a great way to deal with all of the same things that Asimov was dealing with, all of the same things that, all of these sci-fi robot stories have been dealing with for years. So, again, there's no mountain and no voice loud enough for me to preach that Pluto is amazing, and you should absolutely find a way to read it, because it is just that good.
Yeah, this should have been your discussion topic, because
I thought about it, and then I was like, I want to talk about the podcast is about currently published manga, so this is my one more thing. I did set aside that
you can do whatever you want.
That's true. It is my podcast, so
yeah.
I don't know. I knew I would set aside a big time at the end to say.
No, that was a good recommendation. You gushed about it for like 10 minutes, and it sounds really interesting to me. I think this is so up my alley from what you've described.
Yeah, it's so good. It legitimately made me cry. I don't, media has made me cry before. I've seen movies and TV shows that have gotten to me. I don't know if I've ever cried in a manga before. This might be the first time.
Oh, really? Yeah, I cry all the time.
I'm trying to think. I don't cry all the time, but like very often movies and TV shows and stuff will connect with me emotionally in that way. Usually manga doesn't, because it's kind of self-paced. And if I get to that point, I can kind of I can rush past it, or I can take my time and calm myself. But this was like uncontrollably, I could not, I couldn't hold myself back from crying. It's just that good. And that was only that's 45 chapters in. There's still 15 more chapters after that. So.
Oh yeah, nice.
Yeah,
well, sweet.
Pluto by Urasawa and Tezuka. So give that a check out. Anything else you wanna cap the show off at the end here?
Nah, let's blow this joint.
Yeah, let's get out of here. Thanks for listening or watching. Don't forget to check us out online if you enjoyed the show. Giving us more eyes and ears is a great way to support us, but if you want to support the channel more directly, don't forget about the Patreon. That is patreon.com/WGBmanga, where you will be able to hear more from us. There is a almost 3-hour discussion about how Gautam and I got into manga and anime, and we're going to do another one before the end of the week on movies or TV, or maybe if you get through Pluto, we'll talk about Pluto for a couple of hours. But yeah, check me out on Twitter at WGBmanga, and as always, thank you so much for being with us.
Goodbye.
Thanks, and don't forget to read more manga.